Humans weren't supposed to survive on Gorthon 5, much less enjoy it. Yet, there was Eric Marrow, casually grilling synthetic steak strips on a rock, while a sulfur storm raged behind him. "I don't get it," Ralph grumbled, his six-jointed arms crossed as he watched the human from a safe distance inside the survival dome. The alien's blue carapace glinted in the faint light of the planet's molten horizon. The atmospheric toxins alone should have melted his lungs 3 days ago. Instead, he's tailgating. Captain Venn, seated nearby with a datapad in hand, barely glanced up. Humans call it barbecuing, and apparently, this is their idea of relaxation. Ralph's compound eyes narrowed. Relaxation? This planet is classified as a Category 5 death world. It's the second most dangerous planetary designation in the Galactic Register. "Not to them," Venn replied. "To them, it's a bit of a challenge." Outside, Eric flipped the steak strips with the practiced ease of a man who wasn't standing on a planet where rivers flowed with liquid arsenic and the air smelled perpetually of rotting eggs. He glanced back at the dome, gave the two aliens a thumbs up and hollered, "Dinner's almost ready." "You guys eat protein strips, right?" Ralph's mandibles clicked in disbelief. "Captain, we cannot eat those. The spices alone could catalyze a biochemical collapse in our digestive systems." "Just tell him we already ate," Venn said with a sigh. He turned his attention back to his datapad. "And stop staring. He'll invite you outside again." It had started 3 standard weeks earlier when the Federation's Exploratory Corps received an application from a human independent contractor. The Corps had been desperate for help cataloging the newly discovered Gorthon 5, but no one had been willing to set foot on the hellish world. That changed when Eric Marrow showed up. The human hadn't just volunteered. He'd enthusiastically signed a waiver stating that he was fully aware of the risks. Ralph had been there when the waiver was presented. "This is essentially a death sentence," the Corps representative had warned. Eric had laughed. "Buddy, I vacationed in Australia. Gorthon 5 sounds like a breeze." Ralph hadn't known what Australia was, but the tone suggested it was significant. Now, as he watched Eric casually exist in an environment lethal to nearly every known species, Ralph couldn't decide whether the human was a lunatic or a biological anomaly. "You know," Ralph said cautiously, "I've read reports that humans have an unusually high pain tolerance. Maybe that explains his ability to endure this nightmare." Bren snorted. "Pain tolerance doesn't explain why he's, what's the word? Vibing? No. Thriving. That's it. He's thriving out there. You saw him yesterday. He built a hot tub in the middle of a thermal vent." Ralph shuddered at the memory. "It was unsanitary." "It was human," Bren corrected. Outside, Eric had finished grilling and was now setting up a folding chair he'd brought with him. He sat down, took a long drink from a stainless steel container, and appeared to sigh with contentment. The sulfur storm intensified, lightning forking through the yellow clouds like vengeful claws. But Eric didn't seem to care. "Captain," Ralph said after a long silence, "do you think humans actually enjoy danger? I've reviewed the Federation's psychological files on their species. They're full of contradictions. Primitive yet ingenious. Fragile yet resilient. Reckless yet meticulous. Don't overthink it," Bren said. "Humans are strange, and this one is stranger than most. Honestly, I'm just glad he hasn't." A deafening roar interrupted the captain's sentence. Both aliens turned to see a massive creature lumbering toward Eric's camp. It was an ochre-scaled beast with 3 heads, each snapping and snarling in unison. Its claws tore through the jagged terrain like it was paper. "Captain, that's a Gorthon Hydra." Ralph's voice cracked in panic. "It's a top-tier apex predator. We need to evacuate immediately." Before Venn could respond, Eric stood up calmly, dusting his hands on his pants. He waved at the approaching Hydra. Hey there, big fella," Eric called, his voice cheerful. "You hungry? I've got some extra steaks." Ralph froze. Did he just? Yes, he did. Ven muttered, his exoskeleton visibly tensing. The Hydra stopped a few meters away, its 3 heads lowering to sniff the air. Eric, showing no signs of fear, picked up one of the grilled strips and tossed it toward the creature. One of the heads snapped it up. There you go. Plenty more where that came from. Eric gestured to the portable grill. Just don't drool on my chair. The Hydra stared at Eric, its 6 glowing eyes narrowing. The creature was a towering mass of muscle and teeth, but it hesitated, the other 2 heads sniffing the air cautiously. Eric tossed another steak strip, and another head snapped it out of the air with a guttural rumble. Inside the dome, Ralph's mandibles quivered. Captain, he's going to die. We have to. Wait, Ven interrupted, his compound eyes locked on the scene. The Hydra took a step closer. Eric stood his ground, holding up another strip of synthetic meat. That's right, come on. Nothing to be afraid of, just a good meal and a little trust. The 3rd head, the largest of the 3, leaned down, its breath steaming in the frigid air. Slowly, cautiously, it plucked the steak strip from Eric's hand. For a moment, the tension was so thick it seemed even the storm had paused to watch. Then, to everyone's astonishment, the Hydra rumbled contentedly and sat down. Its massive body curled around Eric's makeshift camp, all 3 heads watching him expectantly. Well, would you look at that? Eric said, grinning as he tossed another strip toward one of the heads. Looks like we're friends now. Ralph turned to Ven, his mandibles clicking furiously. Captain, this is beyond irrational. He just domesticated a Gorthon Hydra with grilled meat. Ven leaned back in his seat, an amused expression crossing his features. I told you, Ralph, humans are strange. Maybe it's their pheromones, or their confidence, or their sheer audacity. But whatever it is, it works. Works, Ralph exclaimed. That creature could have devoured him in seconds. But it didn't, Ven pointed out, tapping his datapad. Instead, it's purring like a larval hexabeast. Outside, Eric sat back in his folding chair, his stainless steel container in hand. He raised it toward the dome in a mock toast. Y'all should come out and say hi. Hydra here's a big softy. Once you get to know him. Ralph looked at Ven, his antennae twitching in disbelief. Captain, permission to file an official complaint about this madness. Denied, Ven said with a chuckle. But feel free to take notes. This might be the first time anyone's documented interspecies bonding on a death world. As the hours passed, the Hydra seemed to grow increasingly docile. It even curled up near the grill, occasionally nudging Eric with one of its heads for another snack. Inside the dome, Ralph continued pacing, his frustration growing by the minute. This goes against every known protocol for death world exploration, he muttered. This is reckless. It's human, Ven finished for him. And if I'm being honest, it's kind of impressive. The next day, when the Federation sent a retrieval team to check on the status of the mission, they found Eric lounging in a hammock he'd strung between 2 jagged boulders, the Hydra snoozing peacefully nearby. The retrieval team leader, a dour Vuldran with a clipboard, blinked at the scene. Mr. Marrow, I assume your mission was successful? Eric grinned. Sure was. Cataloged the flora, mapped the terrain, made a new friend. He gestured toward the Hydra, which raised one of its heads and yawned, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth. The Vuldran's antennae twitched in disbelief. This is highly irregular. Yeah? Well, I'm highly adaptable, Eric said with a shrug. Back on the retrieval ship, Ralph couldn't help but notice the way the other crew members whispered and pointed at Eric. The human seemed entirely unfazed, leaning against a bulkhead and chatting casually with a Gorthon 5 field expert. You know, Ralph said quietly to Ven, I think I've figured out why humans thrive in situations like this. Oh, Ven asked, raising an antenna. They don't see danger the way we do. To them, it's just an opportunity to barbecue. Ven laughed, the sound echoing through the ship's corridors. You might be right, Ralph. And honestly, I'm starting to think we could all learn a thing or two from them. As Eric walked past, he gave the two aliens a friendly wave. You guys coming to the next Deathworld? I hear the sunsets are killer. Ralk sighed. Captain, if he survives another mission, I'm requesting a transfer. Van smirked. Good luck finding a post that isn't run by humans. They're everywhere now. That, Ralk muttered, is precisely what I'm afraid of.